Hey everybody, this is Matt Ferry. I was State House candidate in District 48 in 2018, 2020, and I work with Democratic parties around here. And today I'm having a live stream with my friend, Kelly Houske. Kelly, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. How is your day so far?
My day has been amazing, Matt. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you for the invitation. I think it's really incredible that you're willing to take time out of your day to talk about transgender issues and how those issues are affecting us folks in Tennessee. And so thank you. I applaud you. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for saying that because these are important issues. And I feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so we definitely want to, talk about these issues and bring people like you on board. And I know it's not easy. Transgender Day of Visibility was yesterday. And I learned something. I learned something new, which is not a bad thing to do every day. But I learned that this is kind of a duh thing, I know, but it's hard. It's not an easy thing, right? And it's not an easy thing for trans people to come out and to live the lifestyle they want to live. Sometimes they're restricted for family reasons or job reasons or whatever reasons. So it's very important to hear experiences straight from the source. And so thank you again for coming on here. Just to kind of establish what we're talking about, yesterday again was Transgender Day of Visibility, and it's a double-edged sword for a lot of people, I know. But it's important that we have folks like you on here, experienced voices that can speak not only for themselves, but also for the voiceless. Trans folks are just like everybody else, right? They deserve rights like everyone else. They are our brothers, our sisters, our cousins, our neighbors. We go to church with them. We shop with them. We go to sports games with them. And transgendered and intersex individuals have existed for years, if not centuries. But what's new is there's some societal acceptance. But because of that, there's also been pushback from more conservative so-called Christians who we've seen happen here in the state. Tennessee General Assembly has pushed so many anti-LGBTQ bills over the last 10 years or so since they've really taken over the supermajority. And they're just discriminatory legislation. That's all it is. And, they were pushing a lot against same-sex marriage until the Supreme Court case in 2014, Obergefell or whatever it's called. But tell me, how do you feel about, this year's Transgender Day of Visibility, and how do you feel about the state and what they're up to?
Well, I'll start with the International Transgender Day of Visibility. I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to come together to celebrate our individuality. And we see a lot of negative things. If you look at how many transgender people have lost their lives as a result of hateful crime in the last couple of years, that's on the increase every year. We see the attacks that we're receiving now from the state of Tennessee, and you just shake your head and go, Lord, when is it going to be over? So the Day of Visibility for us is a way to celebrate who we are and being our authentic selves. And so it's a very positive thing from my perspective. You see some trans people coming out on that day. You see trans people sharing intimate parts of their story that they've never shared before as a result of that day. And when I worked at Nissan, it was a big deal there to have that forum for people to talk about themselves and their lives and in their journeys, if you will. And I always made a point of participating in that whenever I had an opportunity. So those are things that we celebrate. And you're right, they're not easy, right? We're not all movie stars. When we decide to transition, it's a very difficult journey. It's a very difficult process. And part of it is because of family bias, personal bias, religious bias, whatever the reason is, whether you're um, any spectrum in the LGBTQ community, right? So if you're gay and you come out to your family, you get a lot of back potentially, and over time, of course, those things hopefully work themselves out, but being trans is different because in many cases, like myself, for example, I lived a certain way for so many years. And then I said, you know what, I don't want to be inauthentic anymore. And it's time for me to go through this transition process. And quite honestly, you're scared to death, right? Because you don't know what everybody's reactions are going to be.
Right.
I've been super blessed because I had an employer that fully supported me. My family fully supported me. My children, my grandchildren. So from that perspective, I was really fortunate. On the religious side, that's where things get a little tough, right?
Right. Sure.
Because honestly, you have people who have been taught certain things for their entire lives. And now you're asking them to consider a different point of view. And that's really hard for some people to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. Okay. I don't harbor any ill will toward anybody that believes a certain way because you were raised to believe that way and indoctrinated, and if you will, to do that. So, but Trans Day of Visibility gives us an opportunity just to celebrate a little bit and kind of put some of those issues aside.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I did read that the founder uh, wanted a day of visibility because they had only a day of mourning. They had like a Memorial Day.
Right.
And she wanted a day where they celebrate transgendered individuals and not, mourn the deaths, which is very important also. But I absolutely see the need for it, and I'm glad that it's happening, and I'm glad that more folks are coming out with their experiences. I know it's tough to do that, but did you participate in any events yesterday? Even though we're in the midst of a pandemic and there probably wasn't very many, were you able to join with some folks?
Yeah, I did last night. There are, COVID has really changed the way we do a lot of things, right? In many respects, it's changed how we do business. It's changed how we interact with people. I tend to like face-to-face encounters and talk to people. We don't get to do a lot of that unless we have Zoom or some other format to do that in these days.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully with all of the vaccines and how quickly they're being utilized, that will change, and we can get back to more personal or intimate settings.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Well, we were talking about the state, and we were talking about what they've been pushing, and this has been going on for years. Like I said, I think they gave up on same-sex marriage after the Supreme Court case, but they've been going crazy with these anti-transgender bills, and of course, recently they passed a transgendered athlete bill. Uh, this hurts our trans kids. Already they have some hesitancy about joining sports because they experience discrimination already from so many sides. They know that joining sports would be a risky thing. So this makes it harder, though. And even if the state didn't pass it, just proposing this hurts our LGBTQ youth. This hurts our trans youth. Do you have thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think statistically, here's the thing. We know that 44% of LGBTQ youth have seriously contemplated suicide.
Oh,
That's a big number.
that is.
That's a big number.
It's a very big number.
I suspect, and I'm not a psychologist, I can't tell you specifically why, but I suspect that to a large degree, That's because people don't feel safe in who they are, in their identities, right?
Right.
And even as a younger person, even if you're not sure, I think you still deserve the opportunity to figure it out.
Right.
And by challenging the transgender youth in our country um, at every crossroad, then you're putting those people at risk. Now,
Right.
most transgender kids who are in a loving and supportive family, and supportive is critical here, right? Because if you don't have support, then it's game over anyway. It doesn't matter what the state does, right?
Right. Right.
But most of the transgender kids that I'm aware of today are in supportive families, and with the help of their moms and dads or extended family, are living a full and productive life. And so these are the kids that it hurts the most, right? Because as a transgender kid, and I don't know how many videos I saw of kids testifying, I just want to be with my friends. I just want to be accepted. And as a trans girl or a trans boy, if I want to play sports with my friends and spend time with them and be part of that group, and you're going to take that opportunity away from me, that doesn't make sense. And
Right.
here's the thing, the kids aren't the ones that are raising the issue. I'm talking about the other kids, right? They're not the ones that are raising the issue. It's the legislators and school administrators who either don't know trans kids or don't understand what the issues and challenges are.
Mhm.
And they're the ones that are doing it, and then they're making it for crazy reasons that just make no sense at all.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They're creating this problem. They're fear mongering.
Yes.
They're stirring up these transphobic myths. And my friend had an interesting thing. I asked him some questions about some things, and he said, it's society puts us in a box, right?
Mm-hmm.
We say we're coming out of the closet. Well, society is the one who creates that closet for
Sure.
us. And I mean, this is exactly the same thing. Like, there's no, problem with transgendered individuals, attacking people in bathrooms. That's not happening.
No, it doesn't happen.
Right. And but they've decided that this is a priority for them. And same thing with the transgendered athlete bill. I tend to think that these are red meat issues for their base, that their base likes these kinds of things. I see it as a giant distraction, though. They've ignored COVID for the last year. Right now, we've got vaccinations rolling out like crazy in Tennessee, which is great because we have a strong federal level. We can feel it now. But I'm a little bit worried about all these people who aren't going to get it because of the misinformation and because of all the doubt that has been stirred about vaccines. And this has come from elected officials and religious leaders in our area. So I know this is like, kind of a separate thing, but they're distracting from their own corruption, they're distracting from their own grift, and they're distracting from their own incompetence, or what they really should be doing. And when we talk about healthcare issues in rural Tennessee, it's rough. It's rough for a lot of people. And you want to add on there someone who is LGBTQ, even if they find a doctor in their area who's affordable, what kind of, they face discrimination possibly in doctor's offices. So they're already discriminated against in so many different ways. And the state could be doing so much. They could be doing so much. I mean, just to make healthcare fair for people who don't have millions of dollars to spend on it,
Sure.
or afford to drive 2 hours to Knoxville to go to a hospital. I mean, that's unacceptable, and our state could be doing so much about that. Do you have any thoughts about that?
The only thing I can share is my experience at Vanderbilt University Medical Center on LGBTQ health. And that advisory board, we do a lot of education, and education not only in the medical community but in the community at large. So one of the common things that we do is talk to nursing students who are at different universities in the area. So whether it's at Vanderbilt or others, and talk to some of these nurses, particularly the ones that are getting ready to graduate. Talk to them about what it means to be trans and what trans healthcare looks like. And by being able to provide those those education examples and opportunities, we have a much more rounded graduate coming out of those schools. That's terribly exciting for us. But we also have businesses and other organizations that reach out to us for education as well. And I think one of the big issues that we face in Tennessee is the trans community as a whole isn't very visible. And so if you don't know somebody who's transgender, if you don't have a relationship with them, then you don't understand what kind of impact that's having.
Right.
And so you see this legislation and it's really meaningless to you, right? You don't have kids in school, or you don't have, or nobody's talking about trans kids that are in school. We're here. The community's not as visible maybe, but I think part of that is the process of coming out. It's not easy to do. It's a struggle, because you have to be able to first accept yourself for who you are. And let's face it, Matt, we all struggle with that, right? Self-concept is a big deal.
Yeah.
But if you're going to go against the grain that much, then you really have to have your act together mentally, or it's going to be a disaster. And
Right.
it's a struggle.
Yeah.
But having trans affirming care is a huge part of the process. And so and it doesn't matter if you're a teen or a younger person, or you're an older person. It's important that we have people that are sensitive to those issues and can address them well.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. I didn't know that, and Vanderbilt is taking this very seriously. That's very good to hear. Hey, so tonight, thank you again for coming on here. We also we're supposed to have Jennifer Mayhew with us. She unfortunately couldn't make it, but we do have a special guest from TEP. Can you guess who it is? It's our buddy Luke Arnold.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey, Luke.
Hey.
Luke, thank you for coming on here.
Of course, anytime.
We've been talking about Transgender Day of Visibility was yesterday, and I'm sure that you were busy all day. But you want to tell us about your thoughts and feelings about the day, or anything that happened yesterday that strikes you as great?
So I've been mostly focusing on the legislature, but of course, like I can't imagine like how it is right now, especially in the midst of the pandemic. I'd imagine like yeah, I've just been mostly focusing on the legislature, if I'm being honest with it, because man, they are going against our transgender community, and it's the worst. It's so awful.
You work hard for TEP, so we appreciate that. You work hard for TEP, so we appreciate that.
Thank you. You're too kind.
Tell us about what the state's doing. Tell us a little bit about this.
Okay, so we've had a lot of bills, everything from like trying to take out LGBT curriculum to recently the sports bill was passed that bans or like prevents transgender youth from participating in 6 through 12 sports. We have a sign mandate that would force businesses to put up a sign if they're inclusive of the LGBT community, of the transgender community. I can go on and on, Matt. You know that.
Yeah.
There's at least, I think there's 12 bills that we've been having to deal with this year, and it's awful. It's unrelenting. And like we're doing everything we can. We're contacting legislators. We're trying to show up, because exactly as like I heard a little bit of what you guys were talking about beforehand. Just it's that visibility element, and like our transgender community is everywhere. We just need to like make sure our representatives see them. So like that's kind of like uh, we have a lot of work to do, but I believe like with meetings like this, we're seeing that come about.
Well, I'm glad because, I remember, when I first got started in state and local politics, these bills were starting to come out, and, Tennessee Equality Project was around and they were pushing on it, but they've become more aggressive in years, but they've also grown as a coalition, right? The coalition against this kind of stuff has grown. So if there's people listening tonight and they don't know how to help out, how do they help out, Luke? How can they push back against these disgusting slate of hate bills, as they call them?
Well, the main way you can help out is go to tnep.org, and we always have all the bills that we're working on for the upcoming week listed. I don't think it's posted for next week, but we should have that up shortly. And essentially, what that has, it has a lot of opportunities for you to fill out email campaigns, make phone calls to your representatives, because if they don't hear you, if they don't see you,
That's right.
they're not going to listen to, like, they're not going to protect us as a community. So we have to show up. We have to show them, hey, we care about these issues, and with these issues we have to show them, hey, we're going to stand up for our transgender community, because like it's a lot harder for them to attack our community if they have to look us in the eye and tell us they're doing it. So
Right.
that's a great way to get involved, and it's actually tnep.org. Matt, no, you're good. You're good. But yeah, so like we do a lot of that. And then one thing you can do right now, if you're watching this on Facebook, go to Tennessee Equality Project's Facebook page, and we're gonna be having we're leaving voicemail with the representatives on Monday to basically show solidarity and say like, hey, we don't support these bills, and we'll talk about a number of bills. We're not exactly sure all the bills that we're going to see next week, but I do know we will have the removing LGBT curriculum, or at least allowing parents to opt out, and a school bathroom bill on notice on the Senate floor Monday. So we need to do like as much as we can before now and then to hopefully make a difference,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's super easy to do. And when you contact your representatives, your senators, you're not actually going to talk to them. You're going to talk to their staff, and you just leave a message and say, hey, I do not support this. I am a constituent, and I need you to listen to what I'm saying and vote accordingly. Because you're right, there's sometimes they don't hear from people, and so they think that it's a nothing issue. And as we've learned, even people who we think maybe has our side, maybe hasn't heard from us enough. So and this is an issue that splits some people on the left, but they just don't know. When they hear transphobic myths that are out there, that they tend to agree with, and they don't hear the other side of things, that's a problem. So we need to push back against that kind of stuff.
And I'll take responsibility for that, because as the deputy director of advocacy, I'm trying to get every single person engaged. So please reach out anytime. You can contact us at info@tnep.org, or you can just send me an email, contact lukearnold@gmail.com. We're just trying to make sure these representatives are seeing us. And you might come into this thinking, oh, these people are too educated. These people are superior to me. I can't have a conversation with these people. But they're just like us.
Yeah.
And whenever you show up, whenever you have conversations with these people, it builds, and it ultimately helps us win in the long run. Because when they see us, when they know who we are, they're more willing to work with us, at least in my experience.
Right. Yeah. And, there are some, gay state house representatives now. And that's a big deal. But still, even if one of them's a Republican, the Republicans are still pushing on these types of bills. And like I said, it's red meat for their base. It's a distraction from what they're not doing. for what they should be doing. But it hurts vulnerable people. So please go to tnep.org or text Luke directly if you need some help navigating the website or anything. Luke, thank you so much. I'm going to talk to Kelly a little bit before we leave, but I'm going to let you go because I know you're busy. And I really appreciate you stopping by today and working so hard for Tennessee Equality Project. You're doing a great job. We really appreciate it. And looking forward to working with you some more in the near future.
Well, I appreciate you, Matt, and you too, Kelly. There's so much that needs to be done. So thank you for giving us a platform, talking about this, and bringing it to the front of every person's conversation. We're going to win in the long run, but we just have to keep talking to more people. So with that, I'll get out of here. But I hope you have a good one, y'all, okay?
Thank you so much, Luke.
Thanks, Luke.
Have a good one. All right, Kelly, before we go, I want to ask you one more question.
Okay.
We talked about something before we went live that we haven't talked about. But, I mentioned to you that, I really didn't come to me till yesterday that it might be hard to share your experiences with the public. But, for people who can be a voice for the voiceless, it's great that folks like you are stepping up. But you mentioned that one of your inspirations was Harvey Milk. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So most of the things that I've done in life have been pretty much on the stage. In other words, I've always had fairly high visibility positions at Nissan and at Infiniti. The departments I ran were high visibility in that we touched so many different groups throughout the organization. And so in the process of my transition, HR finally put the brakes on and said, look, we can't notify every single person that you work with that you're transitioning, right? So we're gonna focus on a work group, and then the rest of it's just gonna happen organically. And I was like, okay, that's fine. That was fine. It really, there were no issues whatsoever. Everything went well. The people I talked to, and again, and this goes back to business, right? Most businesses understand the importance of diversity and the impact on the workforce and their companies overall. And they know that when people are their authentic selves, that they get better work performance and more creative ideas and all of that. The state of Tennessee is going in exactly the opposite direction. They want to ignore the transgender community and pretend it doesn't even exist, right? So we know that that's really an awful direction to go in. But anyway, as I was thinking about how do we as transgender people create that space and kind of win the battle of hearts and minds. Right? I said earlier on, look, we're part of the community. We own homes here, we own businesses here, we work here, we shop here, we go to restaurants here. You probably encounter us every day, and in many cases don't even know that somebody's transgender, right? And so our identity doesn't hurt you; it helps you. It helps the community overall. Harvey Milk, a long time ago in San Francisco, was being assaulted, if you will, by Anita Bryant and the Christian right at the time, and in the whole gay liberation movement. And Harvey's, and if y'all have read the book or seen the movie, it's an excellent expose on how to get things done. But Harvey decided that the best way to do this was to make sure that everybody in San Francisco knows somebody who's gay. And so they did a huge push that way. Basically, people who were gay came out of the closet and they interacted, and they had, they were in safer environments, not always, because I think you see some violence in that movie, but the fact remains that they made it more common to know somebody who's gay than to not. And so when the voting came down, there was no question that gay rights were going to be recognized in the city of San Francisco or county, however that worked out. And I kind of feel like it's the same way for us in Tennessee today. We're in a situation where some people know transgender people and don't even know that they're trans.
Right.
And so unless the trans community speaks up and becomes more visible in a positive way, then we're always going to be at the mercy of those who think they're better.
Right.
But they have the only right way.
Right. Right. So, we should be celebrating because transgendered individuals are more visible than ever. But at the same time, we need to be vigilant because discrimination is very real. And when discrimination is coming straight from the state house, the state senate, and the governor's mansion, we've got a big problem. So to see some elected officials, LGBTQ elected officials on the state level is a great thing to see. In Nashville Metro Council, they actually have an LGBTQ caucus. They have enough members that they can actually make a caucus. That's a big deal. That's a very, very big deal when you're talking about, LGBTQ quality of living in Nashville. But there's so much to be done. And so that's one of the reasons why we're here today talking. And I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your thoughts, sharing your experiences. Do you have anything else to share with people about the Day of Visibility or about transgender issues altogether?
We're together. We live our lives together. Like I said before, we shop together. It's really just a matter of accepting people for who they are. And
And if you believe in the good book and it says love your neighbor, then there's no reason why to pass these discriminatory bills. There's no reason to pass that transphobic garbage that they talk about because they're very real people in this state who depend on their elected officials to actually care about them. And that goes same for healthcare professionals. But we can go on and on and on. But I want to thank you again for coming on here and sharing your experiences. Will you come back and do this again sometime soon?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Sure.
And we appreciate it. And you have yourself a good weekend. We'll talk very soon.
Great. Good
All
night,
right.
everybody.
Good night.